As the main antagonist in RWBY, Salem deserves to have a compelling, interesting story and motivation for the things that she does. Unfortunately, with Rooster Teeth at the helm, it doesn't look like the character is going to be developed beyond a stereotypical comic book villain type thing. So with that being said, what do you say we rewrite Salem? If you enjoyed these videos, be sure to subscribe. The only reason I want to stress that is because I really want to be able to make a friggin' poll post once in a while, and you can only do that if you have 1,000 subscribers, which I think is just bogus, and I'm getting off topic. Never mind, back to it. So as always, we are going to start with the backstory for this character, and usually the backstory is pretty much all you really need to change, because the backstory flows into how the main story goes, and then everything would change in direct comparison to it. The original context has Salem being a wielder of magic, locked away in a castle, only to be freed when Ozpin arrives and assists in her escape, with the two falling madly in love not soon after this. Now here I see an interesting opportunity. We don't know why Salem was locked away in the castle. So why not give her some motivation? Humanity was given the gift of magic. Every man and woman was born with it. However, we know nothing of the kingdoms that exist in this pre-apocalyptic world. We only know that there's a handful of them, and they're all kind of slightly different. But nothing is more horrifying than a king that has both power and madness. So the story will go vague, but something more. Salem was locked away by her father, a psychotic and power-hungry man who wanted to learn the ways of absorbing power. He wanted to gain enough power to effectively kill the gods and establish himself as the new god. Salem, having exceptional talent with her magic from a young age, became both a threat and an experiment for her father. No one was to teach her how to harness her power or to use it. In fact, she was unaware that anyone else in the world had the ability. Every couple of months, her father would return, and unbeknownst known to Salem, he would attempt to steal her power, all to no avail. Her castle was guarded by his fiercest warriors and monstrous beasts that had been enslaved by magic. Ozpin still has his role as heroic savior, though he was under the presumption that what was locked away was the Mad King's weapon, that he intended to use to take over the world. Instead, Ozpin finds Salem. Salem, having been kept from interactions aside from her father, was struck by some naive form of love at first sight. She will have quite literally attached herself at the hip to Ozpin, following him wherever they went. Ozpin noticed how powerful Salem was and was determined to understand what she was to the Mad King and why he had locked her away from the world. Later on, during an ambush, it is revealed that Salem was in fact the Mad King's daughter. Ozpin is overwhelmed and killed. This will also have been the first time Salem has ever seen anyone die, or to even know what death is. Her psyche cracks, and a torrent of rogue power is unleashed. She is devastated by Ozpin's death. The Mad King and his entire kingdom are wiped out by her single-handedly, establishing her power as, well, nearly unparalleled. Following this, Salem takes Ozpin's body to the brother that controls death and begs for his return. The brother laments that he cannot do this, as all life only gets to live once, and remarks that his older brother, the god of life, would only say the same. In her sorrow, Salem attempts to use her own magic to bring Ozpin back, but finds herself unable to. She frequently attempts, until she remembers what the brother had said. She steals life from a nearby farmhead and gives it to Ozpin, managing to resurrect him for a brief period. In doing this, she causes an atrocity. The gods see the dangers of magic and the selfishness of the world they created. They steal the ability to do magic from them, and wipe all memory from the current humans. With no magic to save him, Ozpin once more passes. However, some semblance of magic remained, a fundamental part of the humans that the gods could not quite undo. Ozpin's semblance, the remnant of the gods, was reincarnation. Salem is wholly unaware and remarkably retains her magical abilities, but she finds that she has undergone a change since she stole life. Her body is decaying, dying, and she must do this over the years, each time increasing in frequency and urgency, all to retain her power and longevity. Her and Ozpin's reincarnation do eventually reconnect, and they do have children, the 4 maidens, born with reincarnating semblances and magical power. However, it is blatantly apparent to us, the audience, that Ozpin does not love Salem. In fact, there was no evidence that he ever did. She was beautiful, and he took a fondness to her, but that fondness has faded. We've introduced a real-life element to the fairy tale aspect. What appears to be true love might just be infatuation. Ozpin eventually beds another woman, and once Salem becomes aware, she murders Ozpin. She remarks that he was once a brilliant hero that fought for truth, justice, and good, and so Salem would become everything he was not. She would destroy the very world he loved, starting with their 4 daughters. The innocent children are of course massacred, but their spirits live on and become the most powerful force to fight against Salem's wicked campaign. Ozpin cannot hope to stand up against Salem, but he knows his daughters might be able to, and despite the horrible, gut-wrenching regret he feels, he dedicates his subsequent lives to gathering the maidens to stop Salem, which proves to be far more difficult than he initially thought, with each step of the way Salem interfering in one way or the other. I would like for them to tie in with the little soul talk they had from the intro of Volume 1 and the ending of Volume 3. Maybe after years of Salem killing Ozpin and any family reincarnations that he's had, they made a bet. After a certain amount of time, Ozpin would assemble his strongest warriors, the maidens, and if they managed to beat Salem, that would be Ozpin's victory and the end of it all. If they lost, Salem would absorb all the maidens into herself, something she has been reluctant to do due to the small part of her humanity that remained, effectively elevating her to godhood that her father once sought. Now, I thought about this backstory for a while, and I compared it to her original story. Her motivation in the original was the hate towards the gods for not bringing back her love, Ozpin, which to me, it seemed kind of childish. But the story did not represent her as childish. They presented her as selfish and unlikable, just a general evil person for no real good reason other than the fact that she didn't get her way. There's an old saying that I can't remember in the slightest, but it goes something like, making a villain that is unlikable and evil is easy. Making a villain that is likable and evil is hard. Making a villain that the audience sympathizes with is near impossible. Now, what this actually means is stereotypical villains can be pumped out without difficulty. You make someone upset, you give them godlike power, and make them evil. You give them a sad backstory, whatever it takes, but they have no context of character. Making villains that the audience cares about, understands, and even to some extent, kind of roots for, that's hard. I changed a few aspects of Salem. I gave her a reason for being locked away and elevated her power to something that could be considered dangerous, even in a world of magic. I simplified her life so that she loves Ozpin. It is true that naive love we all felt at some young age, that emotion becomes a pretty significant motivation. Due to her lack of interaction with the world, she is naive, impulsive, and more prone to being just generally wicked. As, what was the old saying? True evil is a child pulling the wings off a butterfly. I wanted her to become that, embody that. I also took away her immortality. Honestly, I hate the idea that the gods just decided to make Salem unkillable. It's a deus ex machina, and it makes very little sense to me, and also makes the ultimate endgame, her being sealed away. And so I've given her longevity through stealing life instead. This way, she can live forever, but she's still capable of being killed. I took away the evil pool that turns her evil. I'd like for the dark side of magic to be responsible for her corruption, and maybe even the creatures of Grimm to be a byproduct of her, or in the very least, drawn to her negative emotions to the point of subversion. I made Ozpin not love her, and made him betray her in a very realistic way, one that would push the frail, underdeveloped psyche of a woman kept prisoner for most of her life over the edge. She loved Ozpin, and to her he was everything. The betrayal is what motivates her to destroy what Ozpin loves, the world. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, am I right? It would give Salem plenty of motivation to constantly interfere with Ozpin's life, and their deal will be the reason Salem amasses an army and doesn't directly attack the world as it grows. Ozpin manages to buy Remnant a few hundred years to prepare for the final battle with the woman he betrayed. Though to be fair, almost any written alternative to Salem's backstory would be preferable over what we got. But I will admit that Salem's backstory was a little bit harder to come up with just because the character as a whole is very boring.